Let me get this straight. The show is stretching 11 chapters into 10 full episodes. How? Are they expecting me to watch Muzan walk all the way to the mansion, or... Oh. Hello, comrade. My name is Mahis. Come, get yourself a beverage and sit down with me. We got some ectoplasm to clean up. Spoilers for this video. I enjoyed this season. It's not the entertainment district with its flashy animation and bombastic combat, but it does exactly what it's supposed to. Set up the next arc, which is the main reason for my appreciation. Many times I've heard that Season 3 was supposed to be filling that role, and it always confused me because it never looked like a setup since it was focused on defeating 2 whole upper moons more than anything else. Here on the other hand, we have an exemplary example exhibiting a textbook definition of a calm before the storm. Yes, it was dragged out, as the source material only had a fraction of what was shown on screen, yet in this particular case, I say it's a good thing for one specific reason. We never truly had a break between these high-stakes, high-octane arcs, and now is about the best time to let the viewer chill out before we get into this absolute war between demons and slayers. Longtime viewers might say, preposterous, no Mahis of ours will utter such blasphemy, for he quote, loves to be grabbed by the balls in the matters of storytelling. Which is true, I do indeed prefer the plot to maintain its tension all throughout the important sections of the narrative. Important sections, not the in-between parts like the Hashira Training Arc. It heavily reminds me of another, less like segment of a certain show, the UA Festival. Many say it's a filler, the stakes are low, and most importantly, it's boring. But that's exactly the point. If all we see are non-stop battles fueling our ever-decreasing attention span, we'd lose sight of what we're really fighting for. In the case of heroes, it's smiles on everyone's faces because in the world dominated by villains, it's miserable. Gentle Criminal wasn't threatening lives as in killing them, yet if he succeeded, the festival would have been cancelled, Class 1A wouldn't have performed, and Eri wouldn't have been saved. We want Eri to smile, I don't know what kind of psychopath doesn't, so even the stakes were very much on the grill during this seemingly unimportant event. Anyway, I digress. The Hashira Training Arc doesn't have much risk involved. Instead, it doubles down on another vital aspect of boring parts of the show. Bonding with the characters. Remember our favorite donut? People were complaining that he died too soon and that we want more Rengoku, so much so that he got an anime original episode, which is by definition a filler, all to himself. We need to spend time with characters in order for their story to have an emotional impact. Example, Chainsaw Man. I believe that the turning point, so to speak, happened a bit too soon and didn't hit me as hard as it could if I've spent just a bit more time with the cast. That's what Season 4 of Demon Slayer is trying to achieve, interestingly enough, for people on both sides of the screen. The core has no unity. Sure, Kaguya says they have the will to defeat Muzan and so on, but in practice, they're completely alien to each other, especially if we go up the ranks. How do you expect them to fight together when there is no team spirit? It's going to be a disaster, as morale of the troops accounts for at least 50% of their success. There are dozens of historical battles, the outcomes of which were decided purely by determination and camaraderie. So, what do you do to increase it? Make these guys care for each other by engaging in team-building activities. Hashiras didn't have this in mind obviously, and only focused on the strengthening physically part, but Tanjiro did. He is allergic to negativity as, unintentionally and single-handedly, brought unity to the Demon Slayer core through compassion as well as basic communication. Take Genya. He started to act like a whole new man once he was exposed to the Talk no Jutsu and the good old "we've got your back bro." Hell, even the generic Slayers, who had a tense relationship with Muichiro, were able to establish a better rapport with the help of a common interest. This is exactly what I mean by bonding, and while they throw paper planes, having some oh-so-rare time of peace and wholesomeness, we as viewers do the same. Look back to Obanai from before Season 3. He was a total dick with no redeemable qualities, making me not care for him whatsoever. And now, seeing his crush on Mitsuri and him being jealous of Tanjiro, I'm thinking of his character more like an actual person and not a cardboard cutout. That's the point of spending time with the cast, which, in combination with the author allegedly wishing they made this arc longer, resulted in the Hashira training we have now. Alright, we went through the general premise of the season, so it's time to talk about some specific events and developments, starting with a tactical fuck-up that I couldn't believe the Hashiras would make: the Infinity Castle. You just saw an entire dimension that closed off in front of your very eyes and you didn't report it to anybody? Well, I wonder where all the demons disappeared to suddenly. I understand that they couldn't do much about it, but if the core was keeping tabs on various blood demon arts, they'd know that Tanjiro encountered an ex-Kizuki who possessed an ability to manipulate a building like a damn Rubik's Cube, on top of seemingly making its interior bigger than it's supposed to be. Who is to say that a more powerful version of this ability doesn't exist, or there isn't a demon who can create portals to places? You saw it, both of you did, and with all your combined demon slaying experience, you couldn't consider this being something everyone should know? Come on! After hearing that Hantengo appeared out of thin air in the Sword Mist village, they should have made some type of connection. They didn't. Instead, we got the Slayer's Mark explanation and the subsequent quest to awaken as many of them as possible. Good. Finally, some decent training I was talking about for years. Yet you guys couldn't have thought about doing something like this before? Sanemi was the one to complain about the quality of the Slayers going down recently, so why couldn't he suggest an improvement for their training regimen? Oh, sorry, I forgot that cognitive functions are not exactly his strong suit, but what about the other Hashiras or Kagaya himself? Did it never occur to them that 95% of the core swordsmen are fucking useless? I'm not kidding, I just realized this is the first demon we see killed by a generic Slayer. 4 seasons, 5 technically, it took for a no-name to do anything but die. It's such a bizarre topic that I'll just make a separate video about it and move on here to the training itself. It's actually well done. I always praise Demon Slayer for showing a realistic-ish physical education, and this arc is no exception. They started with 2 types of movement, long-term consistent and short-term burst, continued on to flexibility, which is extra important considering how agile the demons are and what Olympic-level stunts are required to simply stay alive, followed by a good old sword training of endurance and accuracy, concluding with a mental discipline routine. Great stuff. Seriously, something you can use in sports and many other aspects of your life. Be consistent, refine your skills, and learn how to maintain the right state of mind regardless of the situation. Speaking of which, we finally got Gyu's backstory, which further solidified the idea of what's happening in your brain affecting your life, and once again proved that the final selection is utter bullshit on so many levels. Then it was Gyomei's past that got me in the feels way more than the others, because it wasn't just the usual demon came, destroyed everything, and now I'm a slayer. Instead, it was humans who had the biggest role to play, intentionally and unintentionally. Makes sense that a 4-year-old freaked out and couldn't properly recount what happened, especially since demons don't leave a corpse behind. What doesn't make sense is why in the name of our one and only did this idiot not just walk in and say, "Screw you, now that I'm safe around the Wisteria incense, I'm not doing what I said I will." Sure, the demon could have returned or came up with a different plan, yet he could have warned everyone, drastically changing the outcome of this event. I wonder if he was scared of being punished for staying past curfew, or if there was something else. This is not the first time we see this character, and I love how he's been built up, with Gyomei himself not knowing the full story. Lastly, there was some family beef, which I enjoyed due to it not getting resolved even with Tanjiro's help. There were a lot of subtleties in that segment, like Sanemi being aware of our boy's presence considering he alone sensed Nakime, and him potentially testing his friendship with Genya by attacking his own brother. Now, let's talk about what we're truly here for, the last episode. Oh my fucking god, it was such a spectacular spectacle on which to spectate on that if I was wearing glasses, I would have Windexed the shit out of them so I can see every particle of this fabulous explosion again, and again. I'm not ashamed to admit that there were more than several scenes I rewound an unhealthy amount of times. From Muzan entering the mansion, From Muzan entering the mansion to his Titan transformation, I can't praise the production team enough. This is what his arrival looked like in manga. Half a page, yet Ufotable turned it into a borderline fashion show, not only embracing the memes, but also adding a cool fog resulting from the demon daddy's body being burning from all the wisteria around. You know I love to ridicule this dude every chance I get, but I'll be damned if he doesn't own every single scene he's in, except for the last few chapters maybe. Oh, and before we go further, let's take a step back to mention what happened prior to the King of Drip gracing us with his presence, the planning stage. Did you guys realize that it took him roughly a month to locate most Demon Slayers, including Hashira's and their HQ? You mean to tell me I was correct that he could have ended the core at any point in the story? What a fucking surprise that if the big bad of the show actually used their brain for once, the good guys wouldn't have stood a chance. Okay, we all know it's not going to happen, but the fact that Muzan came up with a decent strategy that included stealth, reconnaissance, and even using himself as a bait of sorts makes me believe that he is an evil overlord with centuries worth of life experience. What I don't believe, however, is their whole conversation about eternity, specifically Kaguya's argument. How can you call your will eternal when it solely depends on the existence of a specific person? Also, if Muzan kills all who haven't forgiven him, that will is gone, making it very far from eternal. Instead, you can say, the desire to protect the innocent at all costs is one, as for as long as they are weak, there will be somebody who would put their own life on the line in order to protect them. That I can get behind, because it would be tied to an abstract concept which is closer to what the progenitor was preaching. Perfection. This one depends exclusively on your definition, whether it's the Mayuri Abathur side of constant adaptation or Zeliaporo Muzan's one of true form. Both are not tied to anything specific and are repeatable, meaning that two completely different individuals can come up with this idea separately on their own. Is Kaguya's monologue poetic? Sure. Does it actually mean anything? Not quite. I can argue for and against each of their wills being eternal, and who really cares about it when he's hyping up his squad like there is no tomorrow. I find it funny that even with this great master plan of countering Muzan's arrival and injecting him with some demonades, they're still nowhere close to actually defeating him. They were totally caught with their pants down, courtesy of Tsunemi and Obanai, and it's a miracle that the Slayers didn't suffer a fate similar to ants during the game of hide and seek. Well, that's the story for the upcoming trilogy. As for this video, we shouldn't leave it on a cliffhanger and do some math. To sum up, this season was very good because it served its purpose of setting up the final struggle against the demons. It didn't have the poor pacing of the Swordsman's Village, no dragged out fights surprisingly, and generally speaking, there was nothing I personally didn't like about it. Yes, it wasn't the most exciting one, I'd say it had the least amount of plot or action, yet it had some cool backstories, character development, and more fan service than in the previous arcs combined. Most of which was hot half-naked men of questionable age. So, I give the Hashira training part of the anime a rating of 8 out of 10. It's a great improvement on the source material that does exactly what it's supposed to. It was I, Mahis, still sounding raspy into the microphone. Have a great, whatever time of the day you have. Until next time, cheers. This is exactly what I mean by bonding. This is exactly what I mean by bring bum bum bring bum bum bring bum bum bong.